Okay, so once again, very good morning to all. So in the last lecture or in the last session, we have started the advanced technical training of the strength of material or mechanics of material as per your syllabus. In the last lecture, we have discussed about the importance of ATT, why we are going to study this particular ATT. Then we have discussed about the basic difference between the applied mechanics and the strength of material or the mechanics of material. Also, in the last lecture itself, we have started this topic number 1, that is simple stress and the strain. That is topic wise, we will cover all the advanced technical training related to this mechanics of material or the strength of material. In addition to that, in the last lecture itself, we have covered the two important definitions, that is stress and the strain. We have discussed the basic definition of stress, their important formulas, then which cross section we have to consider during the calculation. Then we have discussed their two subtypes, which is called as a tensile stress and which is called as a compressive stress. In addition to that, what is meant by the normal or direct stress, that also we have discussed in the last lecture. That is, normal and direct stresses are always perpendicular to the cross sectional area. If any stress is perpendicular to the cross sectional area, then that stress is called as a normal or the direct stress. In addition to that, we have discussed another one definition, that is strain. So we are having the simple definition of strain, that is strain is equal to change in length upon original length. The change in length, it is also called as elongation, and it is indicated by the delta L. And here the original length is indicated by LO, that is original length. So what happens if the member or the body subjected to the some amount of force, the length is increases. Sometimes length is increases if it is under tension, sometimes length is decreases if it is under compression, but there is a change in dimension, either increases or either decreases. So that change in dimensions upon original dimension, that ratio is called as a strain, and the strain is unitless quantity, there is no any unit. Okay, in addition to that, there are two important definition of the strain, linear and lateral. So what is meant by the linear, we have discussed. Linear means the strain induced in the direction of force, that strain is called as a linear strain. And strain induced perpendicular to the direction of force, that strain is called as a lateral strain. So suppose, for example, if the force is applied in the x direction, so whatever the strain is induced in x, that strain will be the linear. But some amount of strain will be induced in y direction as well as z direction, but the force is not applied in y direction and z direction, so that strain is called as a lateral strain. So that two definitions also we have discussed, and based on these two definitions, we are having the some constant parameter which is called as a Poisson's ratio. So Poisson's ratio is equal to lateral strain upon longitudinal strain, and this longitudinal strain is also called as a linear strain. So the ratio of lateral strain upon linear strain is called as a Poisson's ratio. So this particular definition, so many times it is asked in the examination, maybe in the GATE examination or the competitive examinations. What is mean by the Poisson's ratio? Maybe the four options will be given in the form of different ratio, and from that four options we have to select the correct option as a lateral strain upon longitudinal or the linear strain. So this is the definition we have discussed in the last lecture. Now we'll discuss about the shear stress. So what is meant by the shear stress? So if you see here in the first figure, in the first figure there are two sub figures are there, that is figure number 1 and the figure number 2. So what is meant by the shear? So here in the normal stress you can see here, so whatever that particular arrows are there, that arrows represents the direction of force, that arrows represents the direction of force. And in the first figure, these arrows are exactly perpendicular to the cross sectional area, means that stress will be considered as a normal stress or direct stress, or it may be tensile or it may be compressive, because tensile stress, compressive stress, normal stress and the direct stress are always perpendicular to the cross sectional area. But if you look at to the second figure, in that the arrows are perfectly horizontal, and according to that I can say that this arrow represents the direction of force, and in case of a shear, or the shear force or the shear stress is always parallel to the cross sectional area. Exactly opposite in the first figure, that is normal stress, these arrows are perpendicular to the cross sectional area, therefore that stresses will be considered as a tensile stress, compressive stress, normal stress or direct stress. But in the second figure, that arrows are parallel to the cross sectional area, means I can say that whatever the shear force is induced in the body, whatever the shear stresses are induced in the body, that shear force or shear stress are parallel to the cross-sectional area. Means here the body is subjected to the two equal and opposite tangential forces. So for that purpose, you have to understand the second figure. In the second figure, what they have done, there are two plates. One yellow color plate is there, and at the bottom side, one blue color plate is there. Okay, and that plates are fit together or they are joined together by using the rivet. So at the center, you can see here, this is the rivet. Okay, at the center point, this is the rivet, and at the top, that is on the yellow plate, this F amount of force is applied at the left side, and at the bottom side, another F amount of force is applied at the right side, but it is applied on the blue plate. Means this F applied at the left side and F amount of force applied at the right side, they are not coaxial. Coaxial means both the forces are coaxial, means they are applied on the same axis. But here you can see the axis of yellow plate is different, axis of blue plate is different, and one F amount of force is applied at the top plate and another F amount of force is applied at the bottom plate. So these two F amount of forces are not coaxial. This F amount of force are not coaxial. These two forces are tangential to the each other. These F amount of forces are not coaxial. These are tangential to the each other. And what happens if these two tangential forces are applied on these two particular two plates? There is a shearing action is taking place between the two plates. So what happens? Due to the F amount of force at the top side and another F amount of force at the bottom side, the shearing action will be taking place in between these two plates, and due to that particular shear force, whatever the stress is induced at the center, that stress is called as a shear stress. If you take the simple example, we're having the two hands. If I will rubbing my two hands on each other, so at that time, there is a possibility of shearing action. So at that time, if I am performing the shearing, at that time, I can say that that type of force will be considered as a shear force. And due to that shearing, whatever the stress is induced, that stress is called as a shear stress. Then what is the shear area? What is the shear area? Whatever these two plates are in contact with each other from left side to the right side, whatever the two plates are in contact with each other, that contact surface or that contact area is called as a shearing area. And this F amount of force applied on the yellow plate is parallel to the shearing area. Similarly, the F amount of force is applied on the blue plate, it is also parallel to the cross-sectional area. If shear forces are parallel to each other, then we can say that the shear stress induced in these two plates are also parallel to the cross-sectional area. Therefore, this is the basic difference between the normal stresses and the shear stresses. What is the difference? The normal stress may be tensile, compressive, direct stresses are perpendicular to the cross-sectional area, but shear force and shear stress are always parallel to the cross-sectional area, and it is also indicated by the figure number 1. And also I have explained that particular concept through this particular two plates which are in contact with the each other. So this is the basic definition of the shear stress. Then another definition is the shear strain. The strain also we are having the same definition, that is change in dimensions upon original dimension. Similarly, here also the shear strain is also defined. So if you look at to the first figure, this is called as a normal strain. Why it is called as a normal strain? You can see here, that is one plate is there which is fixed at one side and the F amount of force is applied. You can see here in the figure number A. In the figure number A, the F amount of force is applied axially. It is applied along the axis. Axis is present at the center, and this F amount of force is applied along the axis, and this is the delta L amount deformation taking place. So this deformation is called as a linear deformation. Why it is linear deformation? Because deformation is taking place in the direction of force. So this is the linear strain, or it is called as a normal strain, that is change in dimensions upon original dimension. But if we look at to the second figure, what is the second figure indicates? One square is there, it is fixed at the bottom side, the top side is free, and at the top side the F amount of force is applied. You can see at the top side this F amount of force is applied. So this is the top side. This is the F amount of force is applied, and this F is parallel to the cross-sectional area. In the figure number A, whatever this F amount of force is applied, this F amount of force is perpendicular to the cross-sectional area. But here, in the figure B, whatever the F amount of force is applied, it is parallel to the cross-sectional area. Therefore, this force will be considered as a shear force. And in the figure number A, whatever the force is applied, that force will be the tensile force. So now what happens if this F amount of force is applied at the top side, the distortion is taking place. So you can see here, the distortion is indicated by the dotted line. At the bottom side, you can see here at the bottom side, it is totally fixed. Therefore, there should not be any deformation at the bottom side. But at the top side, you can see here, at the top side, this particular square is totally free, and whatever the F amount of force is applied, due to that F amount of force, the distortion is taking place, and it is indicated by the second figure. So you can see in the second figure, the distortion is taking place from A to A dash. Okay, at the another side, another distortion is taking place from B to B dash. And whatever this particular top surface is there, this top surface is called as a area under the shear, because this F amount of force applied is parallel to this particular cross-sectional area. Therefore, this will be the shear force. And then what is the angle? What is the angle of distortion? That is theta is the angle of distortion. And based on this particular distortion, here I have made the definition, that is shear strain is equal to change in dimensions upon original dimension. So how much amount of change in dimension is taking place? This dx means A to A dash, whatever this A to A dash distance is there, it is similar to the B to B dash. Either I can take A to A dash for the further calculation, or either I can consider B to B dash for the further calculation. Therefore, shear strain is equal to change in distortion divided by original length. So this vertical length is indicated by the capital S, small h. So this will be your original length. And by using this particular distortion and the original length, here I have calculated the shear strain. So what we have to understood through this particular figures, that is, if the applied force is parallel to the cross-sectional area, in such condition, there is a possibility of shear strain. But if your applied force is perpendicular to the cross-sectional area, there is no any possibility of shear strain. There is a possibility of either tensile strain or either compressive strain. But here in the second figures, the applied force is parallel to the area. Therefore, that applied force will be considered as a shear force. And due to that shear force, whatever the strain is induced, that strain is called as a shear strain. So this is the basic difference between the normal strain and the shear strain. Okay. Then another important thing is that we have to discuss the three elastic constant. So based on this three elastic constant, 101%, some definitions or some 1 or 2 marks numericals will be asked in the examination. It may be important for your GATE exam. Also, it may be important for your competitive exam. So basically, there are three types of elastic constant. So first one is a Young's modulus, or it is also called as a modulus of elasticity. Young's modulus or modulus of elasticity, and it is indicated by capital E. Then how this particular E is defined? How this particular E is obtained, how its formula is defined. So for that purpose, we need to understand the basic concepts of the Hooke's law. So in the strength of material, one of the important law is there, which is called as the Hooke's law. So simple statement is there. Within elastic limit, the stress is directly proportional to strain. So this is the simple and very basic statement of the Hooke's law. That is, within elastic limit, this word is very important. Within elastic limit म्हणजे elastic limit च्या आत मध्ये जर stress is directly proportional to strain असेल तर it is applicable as a Hooke's law. Therefore, you can see here one graph is there. On the x-axis, strain is represented. On the y-axis, the stress is represented. Then this point A will be considered as a elastic limit point. What is meant by the elastic limit point? If I will apply some amount of force on the material, then what happen? Elongation is taking place. Okay. If I will release that particular force, body regain to its original position. But when it is possible up to the elastic limit point. Once you will cross the elastic limit point and I will release the force, then body does not regain to its original position. The regain position will be possible up to the elastic limit only. एकदा का तुमच्या बॉडीने जर इलास्टिक लिमिट क्रॉस केलं आणि जरी तुम्ही त्या बॉडीवरचा फोर्स रिमूव्ह केला तरी पण ती बॉडी ओरिजिनल पोझिशनला येणार नाही. Why? Because that body has itself crossed their elastic limit. Therefore, the Hooke's law is applicable up to the elastic limit point only. Therefore, in the statement मध्ये पण त्यांनी काय सांगितलेलं आहे? First word, within elastic limit, the stress is directly proportional to strain. Therefore, this point A will be considered as a elastic limit point, and whatever this particular inclined line is there, that is from point O to point A, this inclined line represents the stress is directly proportional to strain. Means whatever the stress is induced, the same amount of strain will be induced in that same body. Whatever the strain is induced, the same amount of strain will be induced, same amount of stress will be induced in the same body, and it is possible up to the elastic limit, that is up to the point A. Then that stress is directly proportional to the strain. I have written in the form of formula. What is that? The stress is directly proportional to the strain. So this is the directly proportional to sign, that is stress is directly proportional to strain. Then what I have done? Sigma will be stress will be indicated by the sigma, this directly proportional sign as it is. Then this epsilon, it represents the strain value. Then what I have to do? I have to replace this directly proportional sign in the form of one elastic constant. So what I have done? Sigma is equal to capital E into epsilon. Sigma is equal to capital E into epsilon, and then I have written the final equation in the form of capital E, which is called as a stress upon strain. Means Young's modulus is equal to, or modulus of elasticity, that is capital E, is equal to stress upon strain. But here which type of stress and which type of strain is very, very important, because there are basically three types of elastic constant: Young's modulus E, bulk modulus K, and modulus of rigidity G. All the three elastic constant is having the same definition, that is stress upon strain. This is the common definition for all the elastic constant, but which type of stress and which type of strain, that is very important. So here Young's modulus capital E is equal to stress upon strain. This is the common definition, but linear stress upon linear strain is called as a Young's modulus or modulus of elasticity. Please keep in mind, linear stress means the stress induced in the direction of force, that stress is called as a linear stress, and the linear strain means the strain induced in the same direction of force, that strain will be considered as a linear strain. And that linear stress will be indicated by sigma, and linear strain will be indicated by the epsilon. Therefore, capital E is equal to sigma upon E is equal to linear stress upon linear strain. So please keep this particular definition in your mind, because it is very important to solve the numericals. Also, this question will be asked in GATE examinations or some competitive examinations as a MCQ questions. What is meant by the Young's modulus? So the four options will be given in the form of different ratios. From that, we have to choose the correct option as a linear stress upon linear strain. Okay, so this is the first elastic constant. Then second, shear modulus or modulus of rigidity. Shear modulus or modulus of rigidity. So here name itself suggests that shear, the shear word is mentioned in the name of elastic constant. The shear name is mentioned in the name of elastic constant, or another name is there, that is modulus of rigidity, and this is indicated by the capital G or capital C. So the shear modulus is equal to stress upon strain. This is the common definition for all the elastic constant. Shear modulus is equal to stress upon strain, but which type of stress? That is shear stress upon shear strain is equal to modulus of rigidity. And where this elastic constant we are using? Mostly we are using this particular elastic constant where the shear stresses and the shear strains are developed. Maybe in the torsion chapter. Why in the torsion chapter? Because when the shaft is subjected to the rotating, then what happens? Due to the rotating shaft, there is a possibility of torque and there is a possibility of shearing. So in the torsion chapter, we are not using Young's modulus as a constant parameter or bulk modulus K as a constant parameter in the calculation. In each and every problem in the torsion chapter, we are using this shear modulus or modulus of rigidity as a elastic constant for the further calculation. So please keep in mind, shear modulus G is equal to stress upon strain. This is the common definition, no problem. But shear stress upon shear strain is called as a modulus of rigidity. This is the second elastic constant, and the third elastic constant is called as a bulk modulus. It is indicated by capital K. Bulk modulus K. It is called as a, or it is indicated by the capital K. Now, where it is developed, what is meant by the bulk modulus K? So it is having a very simple definition. So what happens if there is a three-dimensional body is there? Maybe that body will be having the three dimensions. That is, L is the length, B is the width, and D is the depth, or it will be considered as a thickness. So three-dimensional body is there, or cube is there. So what happens if I will apply the three forces? One force is applied in X direction, another force is applied in Y direction, and third force is applied in the Z direction. So what happens, due to the three forces simultaneously applied on that particular cube, there is a possibility of change in volume. There is a possibility of change in volume. That means length is increases from L to delta L, width is increases from B to delta B, and depth is increases from D to delta D. That means all the three dimensions are simultaneously changed. If all the three dimensionals are simultaneously changing, then I can directly say that there is a change in volume. And if I have to calculate such a change in volume values, at that time I'm using this bulk modulus as a constant parameter for the further calculation. Therefore, you can look at here, that is bulk modulus K is equal to stress upon strain. This is the common definition. Once again, bulk modulus is equal to stress upon strain, but which type of stress? Volumetric stress upon volumetric strain. And how to calculate the volumetric strain? Again, the same formula. Volumetric stress is equal to force divided by cross-sectional area. Volumetric strain is equal to change in volume upon original volume. Here, I'm not using the change in length upon original length. I have to calculate the volumetric strain. Means there is a possibility of change in volume. Therefore, I'm using the word change in volume upon original volume. And by using this particular two concepts, I will define the basic definition of bulk modulus is equal to volumetric strain upon volumetric strain. And where we are using this parameter, in some of the applications, there is a possibility or there is a need to calculate the change in volume because three-dimensional bodies are there. At that time, we are not using the capital E, we are not using the capital G, we have to use this K as a constant parameter for the further calculation. Here there is some negative sign is also there. Minus volumetric strain upon minus volumetric strain. Why negative sign? Maybe there is a decrease in volume. So at the time we are using this particular negative sign. If there is a decrease in volume, automatically negative sign will be come in the calculation. If you will write the negative sign, then I can directly indicate that there is a decrease in volume. If we will not write the negative sign, in bracket you have to write there is a decrease in volume. So these are the three elastic constants which are used in the further calculation, and based on this particular point 101%, there is some numericals asked in the examination. It may be GATE examination, it may be your competitive examination. Based on this, some definitions, some MCQ based questions are there. In addition to that, some small 1 or 2 marks numericals are also there. Okay, so these are the basic definitions. Now, deformation of body. Now we have to calculate the elongation. We have discussed all the types of stresses, all the types of strain. We have discussed all the types of elastic constants. Now we have to discuss about the deformation. So what is meant by the deformation and how to calculate the deformation? So basically the deformation of body is taking place due to the two conditions. One is due to the external load and another is self-weight. So now first we'll discuss about the deformation of body due to the external load or the axial load. So for that purpose, you need to understand the figure. So this is the figure number 1. That is one rod BC is there, which is fixed at the top side. You can see here this rod is fixed at the top side, and at the bottom side it is totally free. This cross-sectional A will be considered as a cross-sectional area. This capital L will be considered as a original length. Okay. Now in the second figure, now in the first figure, this is the basic figure. That is the rod base is fixed at the top side and the bottom side is free, and there is a original length. Now in the second figure, what they have indicated, the same rod is there, rod BC, but at the point C, there is a some amount of force is applied. You can see here in the figure. In this first figure, there is no any force applied. In the second figure, some amount of force is applied at the point C. So what happened? Due to this force is applied in the downward direction, the deformation is taking place, and that deformation is indicated by the delta. So now, as per the heading, deformation of body due to the external load. How much amount of load is applied? Suppose P amount of force is applied at the bottom side. Okay, this P amount of force is applied at the bottom side, and due to this P amount of force, the deformation is taking place in the downward direction, and it is indicated by the delta. And if this body or this particular rod is subjected to the external load, and due to that external load, whatever the deformation is taking place, that deformation can be calculated directly by using the formula delta is equal to PL upon AE. So what that particular P indicates? P represents the external force applied on the rod. L represents the original length. A represents the cross-sectional area, and this capital E represents the Young's modulus of this particular material. This particular material will be considered as a steel, aluminum, copper, brass. So each and every material is having their own material properties, and it can be indicated in the form of Young's modulus E, and that E will be given as a constant parameter. A will be given as a constant parameter. Length will be given as the original length. Applied force will be given in the form of P, and by putting all the values in this particular equation, I can calculate the delta L, and that delta L represents the deformation due to external load or axial load, because here actually load is applied. If there is no any load is applied on the body, no deformation will be taking place. So here, whatever the deformation is taking place, it is due to the external load only. So this is the condition number 1 for the deformation calculation. Then we are having the another deformation formula, that is deformation of body due to self weight. So what is meant by the self weight? If any body is in hanging position, what is meant by the hanging position? Now here again you can consider the one more rod. So this is the rod. Okay, this is the rod, and it is fixed at the top side. So this particular top hatching line, it represents the fixed position, but at the bottom side, the rod is not fixed. It is totally free. Means I can say that this particular rod is in hanging position. If this particular rod is in hanging position, whatever the self weight of this particular rod is there, this self weight is applied in downward direction. Whatever the self weight of this particular rod is there, it is applied in the downward direction, and due to that particular self weight also, there is a possibility of deformation. What happened? Due to the self weight applied in the downward direction, here there is no any external load is applied at the bottom side. No any external load, no any internal load. Due to the self weight only, that body itself is having self weight, and always the self weight is acting in the downward direction. And due to that particular self weight, deformation is taking place. For that purpose, we are having the formula delta L is equal to WL square upon 2E. Previous formula is there, deformation due to the external load, delta L is equal to PL upon AE. In that capital P represents the external load applied on the rod. But here, the self weight of the body is acting in the downward direction, and due to that self weight, the deformation is taking place, and it is equal to delta L is equal to WL square upon 2E. And in that, this W represents the self weight of the rod or body which is applied in the downward direction. And always in some of the application, some heavy components are there, some heavy parts are there. If such heavy parts are in hanging position, so there is a possibility that is it will be, or there is a possibility to shift their self weight in the downward direction, and also there is a possibility of deformation. So in such condition, how to calculate the deformation? Then we are not having their applied load value, so at that time we have to calculate their self weight, and by using that particular self weight I can calculate the deformation, that is deformation due to self weight, that is delta L is equal to WL square upon 2E, and delta L is equal to PL upon AE. That formula will be applicable, that is deformation due to external load or the axial load. So these are the two conditions for the deformation calculation. So please keep in mind or take this particular two formulas in your notebook for the further calculation, and based on this particular deformation formulas, so many times the problem of 1 or maximum 2 marks question will be asked in the examination to calculate the deformation. So these particular formulas are very, very important. Now the relation between three elastic constants. So we have discussed the three definitions. Capital E is equal to linear stress upon linear strain. Capital G is equal to shear stress upon shear strain. Capital K is equal to volumetric stress upon volumetric strain. And whatever these three elastic constants are there, we are having some of the 1 or 2 marks numerical, as well as we are having some MCQ based questions. But before that, we need to understand the relation between all the elastic constants. So relation between all the elastic constant means relation between capital E. Relation between capital E means Young's modulus. G or C, your modulus of rigidity, it is indicated by either capital G or capital C. Then bulk modulus is indicated by K, and also one more constant parameter is there which is called as a mu. And a relation between all the elastic constants. So what is the first relation? Relation between modulus of elasticity and bulk modulus K. Relation between E and K. So this is the first relation. What is that? E is equal to 3K in bracket 1 minus 2 mu. We have to remind this particular relation, or it should be at your tip of tongue. Any times this question will be asked as objective, or based on that the numericals are also asked. So this is the first relation. Then what is the second relation? Relation between modulus of elasticity and modulus of rigidity G. That is the relation between E and G. What is that relation? E is equal to 2G in bracket 1 plus mu. E is equal to 2G in bracket 1 plus mu. In the first relation, the G is not present. In the second relation, K is not present. Therefore, the first relation is applicable for only E and K. Second relation is applicable only for E and G. But whatever the third relation is there, this relation represents the relation between all the three elastic constants, because here E is equal to 9 kg divided by G plus 3K or 3K plus G. So here capital E, Young's modulus is also present, K is also present, G is also present. Therefore, the last relation represents the relation between all the three elastic constants. E is equal to 9 kg divided by G plus 3K or 3K plus G. Any you can take. And these are the three relations we have to use for solving the further numerical. So all these particular relations, it should be at your tip of tongue. This mu is the constant. Mu is the another constant parameter, but only here we have to focus on the E, G and K. So these are the three relations we have to use for our further calculation purpose. Sorry, here E is equal to 2G in bracket, not 1 plus mu. The second relation is somewhat changed here. E is equal to 2G in bracket 1 plus 2 mu. 2G in bracket 1 plus 2 mu. This is the wrong one. This will be the correct one. E is equal to 2G in bracket 1 plus mu. This is the correct answer. Relation between modulus of elasticity and modulus of rigidity will be considered as a E is equal to 2G in bracket 1 plus mu, not 2 mu. Please keep in mind 1 plus 2 mu. So these are the three relations. And this Poisson's ratio definition already we have discussed, that is lateral strain upon linear strain, or it is also called as a longitudinal strain. Now, the stress strain curve for the ductile or brittle material. This is very important point, and based on this particular stress strain diagram or stress strain curve, so many times the questions are asked in the examination as objective questions. Please keep in mind, these two curves are very important. Small MCQ based questions are asked in the examination, but sometimes students are unable to give the proper answer because they are unaware about which point is indicating which parameters. So first of all, here it is very important to understand importance of all the points. Importance of all the points. What that A indicates, what B indicates, what C indicates, what D is indicates, what E is indicates. That understanding of point is very important. Therefore, the stress strain curve for the ductile material and brittle material is very important. So quickly, I will explain all the points, then you can easily understand that from this region, what it indicates, this region, what it indicates, that I will explain. So first of all, we'll discuss about the stress strain curve for the ductile material, and whatever the ductile material I have considered, it will be considered as a mild steel. So whatever the curve I have represented here, this is for the ductile material, and whatever the material I have considered, this will be the mild steel. So now here you can see the two axes are there. One is x-axis, and vertical axis will be considered as a y-axis. On the x-axis, we have considered as a strain, and on the y-axis, we have considered as a stress. And that curve is starting from this particular origin point. It is called as a O, or it will be considered as a 0 point. Okay, so let us assume that this is the O point as an origin, and then from this particular O to A, from this particular O to A, it represents the Hooke's law. Just now we have discussed. What is meant by the Hooke's law? Within elastic limit, the stress is directly proportional to strain. Within elastic limit, the stress is directly proportional to strain. That means this point A will be considered as a elastic limit point. This point A will be considered as a elastic limit point. At this particular point A, whatever the amount of stress induced, same amount of strain will be induced in the same body, or whatever the amount of strain is induced, same amount of stress will be induced in the same body, because the stress is directly proportional to the stress. And this particular portion O to A is called as a elastic behavior. What is meant by the elastic behavior? So I have applied the some amount of force, and if I will release the force, body regain to its original position. Means there is a property of elasticity, and that regain position is possible from this particular point A only. Once your material will cross the elastic limit point, or your material will cross this particular point A, elasticity property will not be applicable. That material remains in deformed position as it is. It does not regain to its original position. म्हणजे जर तुमच्या बॉडीनं हे इलास्टिक लिमिट पॉइंट जर क्रॉस केला आणि तुम्ही त्या बॉडीवरचा फोर्स जर रिलीज केला, तरी पण ती बॉडी ओरिजिनल पोझिशनला येणार नाही. इट रिमेन्स ऍज इट इज इन द डिफॉर्म्ड पोझिशन इटसेल्फ. व्हाय? बिकॉज that body or that material is already crosses the elastic limit. Okay, so this is the point A, or this OA portion represent the stress is directly proportional to the strain, or this particular nature will be considered as a elastic in nature. Then point B, here I have represented point B. What it indicates? Point B, upper yield stress point. Meaning of each and every point I have represented. OA is called as a proportional limit, means stress is directly proportional to strain. Point B is called as a upper yield stress. Now here from point A to B, again it represents some inclined line. It is looking like an inclined line, but it is not actually inclined line. Inclined line is applicable up to the point A only. Inclined line is applicable up to the point A only. After point A, there is a point B, which is called as a upper yield strength. So what happened exactly here? There is an increase in stress and increase in strain. From point A to B, there is a increase in stress as well as increase in strain, but both are not directly proportional to each other. In the portion AB, stress is increases as well as strain is increases, but they are not directly proportional to the each other. And that point B is called as a upper yield stress, or it is called as a upper yield stress point. Then what happened? Again, I have increased some amount of load. Then what happened? Your point B is shifted to the point C. So what happened? There is a drop in stress from point B to C. Suddenly there is a drop in stress, but there is an increase in strain. You can see here, strain is increases, but the stress is goes on decreasing. Why strain is increases? Because there is an increase in dimension. If I am applying or if I am increasing the force applied on the body, जसा जसा मी force increase करणार आहे तसं तसं त्या बॉडीचं elongation काय होणार आहे, वाढणार आहे. If elongation is increases, then there is an increase in dimension, means there is an increase in strain. If I am increasing the force, there is an increase in dimension, there is a change in dimension, means there is an increase in strain, but sometimes there is a possibility of decrease in stress, and that will be happen from portion B to C. There is an increase in strain, but there is a decrease in stress, and this point C is called as a lower yield stress or lower yield stress point. So this is the meaning of point C. Point B, there is an increase in stress and strain, but not directly proportional to each other. Point C or portion BC, there is an increase in strain, but there is a decrease in stress. Okay. Then again, I'm increasing the some amount of force, and again, your stress and strain both are again increases up to the point D. Your stress and strain both are increases up to the point D, but once again, they are also not directly proportional to each other. Okay, they are looking like an inclined line. The portion CD, it is looking like an inclined line, but they are not directly proportional to each other. And this portion CD will be considered as a plastic behavior. That means in this particular portion, if I will release the force, body does not regain to its original position. That body remains as it is in the deformed position, and there is a nick formation taking place at point D. There is a nick formation taking place at point D. What is meant by the nick formation? That means deformation is actually visible to you. What is meant by the nick formation? I will show here. So here, nick formation, you can see due to the increasing force, here at the center portion of the body, there is a decrease in dimension and nick formation is taking place. Whatever the breaking will be taking place, that breaking will be taking place at this particular portion, and that nick formation will be visible at this particular point D. And whatever the stress is induced at this particular point D, that stress will be considered as a ultimate stress point. That stress will be considered as a ultimate stress point. So once again, I will explain what that portion CD represents. The stress is increases as well as strain is increases, but they are not directly proportional to each other. Then that portion CD represent the plastic behavior, means if I will release the force, body does not regain to its original position. It remains as it is in the deformed position only. And in addition to that, at this particular point D, the nick formation will be taking place and it is visible to you. This nick formation is visible to you. At point B, deformation is taking place. At point C, deformation is taking place. At point A also, deformation is taking place. But at this particular 3 points, the deformation will not be visible to us. Actual deformation will be visible to us from this particular point D in the form of nick formation. And whatever the stress is induced, that stress is called as a ultimate stress point. Then again what I will do, again I will increase the load on the body, and suddenly there is a drop in stress value, there is a continuously increase in deformation, and at the end, at point E, the fracture will be taking place, means your body will get break at the two different portions like this. At point D, the nick formation is visible, but again there is a continuously increasing force. So due to the increase in force, again there is a continuously increase in deformation from point D to E. If continuous deformation is taking place, at one point this body will be break into the two different portions. There is a drop in stress value, and here the breaking will be taking place at this particular point E, and that point E called as a fracture, or it is also called as a breaking point. Please keep in mind, from portion D to E, suddenly there is a drop in stress, increase in dimension, and dimensions are increased in such a way that the maximum deformation will be taking place and body will get break into the two different portions, and you will get the fracture point, or you will get the breaking point as point E. Then in this particular ductile material, what will be the maximum stress value? In this particular ductile material, what will be the maximum stress value? E will not be considered as a maximum stress value because here the actual breaking is taking place. Body will get break into the two different portions. Now A, it is also not a breaking point. It is below the point B. C is also not breaking point because it already represented lower yield point. Now we have to think about the point B and the point D. But as the point D is represent at the top side, but then also it will not be considered as a maximum stress point. In case of a ductile material, this B point will be considered as a maximum stress point. जरी हा पॉइंट डी बी च्या वरच्या बाजूला दिसत असेल तरी पण आपण हा डी पॉइंट मॅक्सिमम स्ट्रेस पॉइंट कन्सिडर करू शकत नाही. व्हाय? बिकॉज at this particular point D, the stress is maximum, but actually nick formation is taking place. मटेरियलचं डिफॉर्मेशन आपल्याला त्या पॉइंटला काय करायला लागलेलं आहे, दिसायला लागलेलं आहे. जर डिफॉर्मेशन जर आपल्याला दिसत असेल तर that point will not be considered as a maximum stress point. Therefore, this B point, what is that? Upper yield point or upper yield stress point will be considered as a maximum stress point for the ductile material. Please keep in mind, in case of a ductile material, the upper yield point will be considered as a maximum stress point. Point D will not be considered as a maximum stress point. It is looking at the top. It is looking at the top of the B, but at the D, actual nick formation is taking place. इथं त्या मटेरियलचं ब्रेकिंग तुम्हाला दिसायला लागलेलं आहे. That breaking is already started. Therefore, that will not be considered as a maximum stress point. At B point, deformation is taking place, no problem, but it is not visible to us. Therefore, that B will be considered as a maximum stress point. So this is about the stress strain curve for the ductile material, and it will be applicable for the mild steel. Now immediately we'll go for the stress strain diagram for the brittle material. Means I have taken the example as a glass. What is indicates glass? Same figure I have taken. On the x-axis strain is there, on the y-axis stress is there, and here only 2 points are there. That is point A and point B. So point A means proportional limit point is applicable for all the type of material. It may be ductile, it may be brittle. Okay, so stress is directly proportional to the strain up to the point A. So that will be the proportional limit. But after point A, immediately point B represents the fracture. If I will throw the glass on the earth, so immediately there is a breaking. The glass is not looking like some amount of deformation is taking place, then some deformation is taking place. It's not showing like a rubber. So if I will throw the glass on the ground floor, immediately it will get break. Therefore, in case of a brittle material, after the proportional limit, directly you will get the fracture point, or directly you will get the breaking point. So in case of a ductile material, you will get the point A, B, C, D, and then at the end point will be considered as a E. But in case of a brittle material or in case of a glass, that upper yield point, lower yield point, ultimate stress points are not visible because this is the brittle material. So there should not be any elastic deformation. There should not be any plastic deformation in case of a glass. If I will throw the glass, it will take some proportional limit, but after the proportional limit, directly it will get break into the number of portion. Therefore, here after point A, directly point B is taking place, which is called as a fracture. And here, in case of a brittle material, this fracture point or this breaking point will be considered as a maximum stress point. Point A will not be maximum stress point because here it is the proportional limit. जेवढा stress आहे तेवढाच तुमचा strain असणार आहे. But after point A, there is a point B where the breaking is also taking place, fracture is also taking place, and that point B will be considered as a maximum stress point. कारण ह्याच end point ला तुमचं breaking पण होणार आहे आणि त्याच point ला maximum stress पण काय होणार आहे? Induce होणार आहे. So this is about the stress strain curve for the ductile material and the brittle material, and whatever the things, whatever the importance of each and every point I have explained, it is 100% important for the objective questions. What is the maximum stress point for ductile material? What upper yield point indicates? What lower point it indicates? What point D indicates? These are the some objective based questions are 100%. It is asked in the examinations. It is applicable for your competitive examinations as well as for the GATE examination also. So this is about the stress strain curve for the ductile and the brittle material. Okay. So with this today, we will stop here. Remaining part we will take in the afternoon lecture. Remaining part we will see in the next lecture. Now I request all of you, please represent your attendance in the chat box along with your division and roll number.